We're talking about the flood of Noah. On Wednesday night, Marilyn asked a question after we talked about the flood. You remember what that question was, Marilyn?
Yeah.
Did the fresh waters mix with the salt water? Yes, they did, of course. Now remember, when the Noah's flood came, that the earth was not continents. It was Pangea or Gondwana, which means that the earth was all on one side and water was on the other side. Now water on the other side was probably salt water. The earth is so much different now than what it was before the flood. That's one of the reasons why we don't live very long. Is because that whole atmosphere. The earth, when the flood came, there had been an ocean in the sky. It was just like a bubble around the whole earth. I don't know how deep the bubble was, but it was like a sphere around the earth. It filtered all of the sun's rays to this ocean in the sky. And of course we had land on one side and we had water on the other side. Now, there were three sources of water. The springs of the deep, most springs are freshwater springs. The Pigay are the springs of the deep. There were three sources of water. The springs of the deep, the fountains, were opened up like we have Chattavich Creek here, and it comes from three creeks, or four creeks actually, and they come down out of the mountains. They all come together through the creek that goes by our house. That's a freshwater creek. Now most of the time these are fresh water. It is not saline water. If you go to Israel and you fly down with an airplane down the Jordan Rift, do you know that you can fly below sea level for miles and miles? You're flying below sea level. And in the Sea of Galilee, until Israel took the land back, the Sea of Galilee had several saltwater springs in the bottom of it. And they went down into the Sea of Galilee, which is hundreds of feet in places. Now here's a, look at it this way. Here's the ocean over here, the Mediterranean Sea. We go over the mountains here, we go down into the Jordan Drift. And way up here is the Sea of Galilee up here. Now all of this is under sea level, below sea level. So some of the springs come from here and go into this area. And so those are saltwater springs. The water in Noah's flood, it had never rained before. It was a mist that would go up. It was like a greenhouse. There was water over here where the sea animals were and everything like that. Here's the land. Here's springs coming out of here. Okay? And then there's rain. There's rain, and with rain is lightning also and thunder. Things happened at Noah's flood that no one had ever seen before. And then it says that God opened up the spillways of heaven, the waters. There were rivers coming down from heaven. Rivers flooding the earth. And so the earth all became covered with water, even the mountains. Now, I don't know, neither does anybody else. I can console myself with my ignorance. I don't know how many mountains were created when we had the division of the earth. In the days of Peleg, God divided the earth, which we're going to get into all these things. This is all geographical and geological events. So we have three sources of water. We have rain, which they hadn't seen before, and probably lightning and thunder. We have springs from the deep, which they had seen, and then we have in the heavens just there's a river coming down from heaven that they had never seen that before either. So people are really afraid. They're on the outside of the ark. God has shut the ark himself. How did the animals get in the ark?
Well, God had control of that.
God led them to the ark. It wasn't Noah going out. It was God led the animals. And the animals, the DNA of the animals had been contaminated also, so he brought in pure animals. They had no angel DNA in them, so to speak. No demonic DNA in them. So everything that gets in the ark, Noah, his wife, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, his sons, and their wives, all get in the ark. And there's 8 people. And then we have one example of the rapture before the flood, and that is Enoch was taken away. God took him into heaven. Now let's go down and see what in the world happens here. In 1 Peter 3:18 through 20, it told us that many of the people outside the ark were saved. They were disobedient, but they were saved. They believed after it started raining. Now, in the tribulation period, here, there's going to be a rapture right here, whether you believe in that or not, all of you out there. There is a rapture. And we're going to get into that in the doctrines of the Bible. There's a rapture, and their church and all the saved in the church age are taken up at the end of the church age, and then we go into the tribulation period. In the tribulation period, it says there will be a number saved during that period of time. Just like in the days of Noah, it says. Just as in the days of Noah. Jesus went down into Hades, and we talked about that before. Before he went to heaven, died on the cross, he went down to Hades, in paradise, side of Hades, and he preached to those there and said, I have died on the cross for you, and you are going to go with me to heaven when we leave this place after 3 days. And that's what happened. So during this tribulation period, a lot of people are going to be saved, like in the days of Noah. But they're going to have to die. If you were on the outside of the ark, you couldn't be good enough swimmer. God shut the door. When he shuts the door, at the end of the church age, all hell will break loose on earth for a while, for 7 years. A week of years. But in heaven, there's going to be celebration up there, because during that 7-year tribulation period on earth, the Lord Jesus Christ is going to be with his bride, and all the saved and all the guests of the wedding are going to take place in heaven. Good, joyous festivals up there, and hell on earth down here. Now it says that the water was 22.5 feet above the tallest mountains. And the water mixed between the salt water and the fresh water. And then the water subsided little by little by little by little. Now I don't know whether there was as much salt in the water at that time as there is now. In places where the water ran in big caverns in the earth, you have salt mines today, don't you? Still. You have salt mines. That all took place, most probably, at the flood. This was a universal flood, and it was a real flood. It didn't flood part of the earth, it flooded all the earth, but the earth was in one place. And the water prevailed upon the earth 150 days, about 5 months. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the cattle that were with him in the ark. Now, Noah went out and gathered food for everybody. All the animals were vegetarians, even the lions at this time. They were not killing and eating each other at that time. When the animals were turned loose out of the ark, a lot of things changed. First of all, animals became food for man. Not before the flood, but after the flood. The trees that were on the earth, on this Pangea up here, they started growing again after the water subsided. I remember when they flooded the Kern River Valley up there east of Bakersfield, California. It was great big lush farms down there. Remember, Marilyn? You didn't get to go see it until I took you up there since you were a little girl. But all of that place, there were trees sticking up out of the water for a long time that had green leaves on them. And then finally, they all drowned after several years. And then you go out there in a boat and you get your line hooked in those trees that were underwater. That's a problem. And run into them also. When the lake subsided and there was a drought, you could see the old farms again down there. The water started going down, and you could see where the farms were and some of the old broken trees. And when they got out there in the light, sunlight, the trees would just fall apart and crumble. Well, the flood wasn't on the earth that long now. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the cattle that were with him in the ark. Now, a lot of people say, boy, that must have been a stinky place, throwing manure and everything just out that one little old door in the top of that ark. They were hauling all of this feces and stuff out there all this time. I don't know that God didn't put those animals in hibernation at that time. Some animals hibernate anyway, don't they? Mm-hmm. God caused the wind to pass over the earth, and the water subsided. He caused the wind to go over and out. Now, where did the ark land? It didn't have a sail on it, didn't have a rudder on it, but God landed that ark exactly where he wanted it to land. And where did it land? Where?
Euphrates and the Tigris River?
Up above that, quite a little way. On Mount Ararat.
Yeah.
Mount Ararat. When I was flying over the Mediterranean Sea in 1975 and 76, I could see Mount Ararat over there. It was snow-capped. It's a tall mountain. Oh, that's where that lay. That's where it landed. And it's going to tell us all about that. And also the fountains of the deep and the floodgates of the sky were closed. First of all, the floodgates of the sky, there's not going to be an ocean in the sky anymore. There's going to be clouds now. Everything changes. And the rain from the sky was restrained. And the water receded steadily from the earth, and at the end of 150 days, the water decreased. And in the 7th month, now 5 months, it says it was on the earth. Then God begins to dry it all up. Now there's been 2 months take place now. And the water receded steadily from the earth, and the end of 150 days, the water decreased, and in the 7th month, on the 7th day of the month. Now the word 7 in the Bible means a lot, doesn't it? The number 7. It means completion, or perfection. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested upon Mount Ararat. And a lot of people have said that they have found pieces of that ark up there until this day. And you can see documentaries and see people going up. You can see this great a big ship that was up there, this great big boat. And the boat was how long? 450 feet long by 75 feet wide and 45 feet tall. And how many stories? 3 stories high. And the water decreased steadily until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, the tops of the mountains became visible. Other mountains besides Mount Ararat. Mount Ararat's tall. Now, I told you before that I don't know how many mountain ranges were created. White Mountain, we know, went back before the flood, but it wasn't where it is today. There's trees up on White Mountain up there, those bristlecone pines that were there during the flood. And it will show you in the rings how much water was there. It was dynamic, much more than normal. And they go all the way back into eternity past, thousands and thousands of years. And all of this is a letter to us telling us this is the history of the earth. This is what happened. You can tell from those mountains up there when Mount Vesuvius erupted in the Mediterranean. Those trees up there were there when the plagues of Egypt were sent upon Egypt by Moses and Aaron. Then it came about at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made, and he sent out a raven. A raven is like a crow, okay? A crow and a raven, they have different tail shapes. They look alike. And it flew here and it flew there until the water was dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove from him. He sent out a dove now. A raven, you know, ravens live everywhere, don't they? They're unbelievable creatures. They can subside on nothing out there. Then he sent out a dove from him to see that the water had abated from the face of the land. But the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot, so she returned to him in the ark, while the water was on the surface of all the earth. Then he put out his hand and took her and brought her back into the ark by himself. So he waited yet another 7 days, another week, a week of sevens, you know, 7, number of perfection. And again sent the dove out from the ark. And the dove came to him toward evening, and behold, in her beak was a freshly picked olive leaf. There was an olive tree still there. Mm-hmm. So Noah knew it, and the waters were abated from the earth. Then he waited yet another 7 days, another week of sevens, another week of, or days of perfection. And he sent out the dove, but she did not return to him again. Now it came about in the 601st year, in the first month, in the first of the month, that the water was dried up from the earth. And then Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the surface of the ground was dried up. And he, you know, I'm going to wash some really dirty pants today. I don't wash my pants, my work pants, until they're pretty dirty, because it wears them out washing them. And I'm going to dry them out on line out there, and it won't take very long to dry them out either, will it? No. And in the 7th month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dry. Then God said to Noah, spoke to Noah, saying, Go out of the ark, you and your wife, and your sons wives with you, and bring out with you every living thing of all the flesh that is with you, the birds and the animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, and they may breed abundantly on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. But something changes in all of their behavior. Their behavior changes. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him, and every beast and every creeping thing, and every bird and everything that moves upon the earth went out by their species and families from the ark. And then Noah does something. Some of these animals had been on the ark, and they'd been safe for a whole year or so, but now some are going to die. Some are going to die. But Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal and every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Now he's going to kill some of these, and he's going to offer them burnt offerings on this altar. He's going to burn them up. Remember, they had never eaten any flesh before. These hadn't. And according to the book of Enoch, they were eating, these Nephilim were eating animals, which they weren't supposed to eat. They were eating humans, and they were drinking the blood of humans like vampires and animals. And the Lord smelled the soothing aroma, and the Lord said to himself, I will never again curse the ground on account of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. And I will never again destroy every living thing that I have done. And while the earth remains, and cold, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat. Now remember, now we're going to have weather. Before the flood, there was no such thing as storms and stormy land and winter and summer. It was all like in a greenhouse. And now we're going to have winter, we're going to have spring, we're going to have summer, and we're going to have fall. Before that, things were just reproducing continually. I remember when I was a young boy up here in Fish Lake Valley, we used to say we had 2 seasons, winter and August. That's it, winter and August. In August, it was warm. The rest of the year, it froze. Ozell Lemon down here just lived not too far from here on Sage Hen Road. She used to tell people never plant any tomatoes until the 1st to the mid of June, because it's going to freeze. I have seen it snow here in July. Down July the 4th, I took Thomas down there one time, and we were on the creek, and there was still ice on the edge of Chatterfish Creek here. I've got pictures of it. And it was snowing July the 4th. The weather changed since then. Now, we have already had 2 cuttings of alfalfa in the alfalfa areas where they grow alfalfa. And it is June. And we have 2 cuttings already. Down in the Old River area, our farm was down where we have a farm, or part of a farm down there. They used to cut hay from about May to about September, and then they brought the sheep in and sheeped off they grazed off all the alfalfa. Now they're cutting hay in February, and they're putting the sheep in December. The weather's changed a lot. But here is where the seasons began. While the earth remained, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat. They had never known cold before. This is part of the curse now. And summer and winter and day and night shall not cease. 4 seasons. Human government is going to be installed here. Human government. The basis of human government is going to be established now. We're coming up to that. That's the next message. The next message, human government. Our Father, we send this message out to you that people might understand your word better. We've got a lot of people that are so confused religiously in the world because they don't know the reality of when creation really happened. What the earth, is not flat. But a lot of people believe in a flat earth. There are many people out there, Father, that are so uninformed about what the Bible really says. And that's why I'm doing these messages, to help them understand that the Bible is a reality that is really scientifically correct. That the earth has evolved, changed by you, from how you created it until now, how it is today. In Jesus' name I pray.